Alright, what's up guys? I am here bringing you my Traptrix deck profile. Brand new card, Traptrix Sarah. Completely changes up the deck, completely speeds up the deck. This deck is very fast, very aggressive now. It is no longer like a super slow laid back deck. It actually has some decent going first plays. We're going to go ahead and get into that, but definitely a very sped up deck. I've been testing it the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 days, and I'm very serious when I say this is one of the best going first decks I've ever played in my life. It just sets up a field that's so annoying to deal with, and it just keeps bringing more and more and more. It's absolutely amazing going first. I can't believe how good it is. The only issue is it does have problems going second, but this is one of the best going first decks I've ever played in my life. But let's get into it. Let's get into the build that I've designed so far. First of all, we play 3 copies of Traptrix Morello. Just put it down there. This one basically, all of them, first let's preface this, all of them are unaffected by hole cards. And then Sarah's unaffected by trap cards if she's link summoned, and Rafflesia is unaffected by trap cards if she has a material attached. So all of them are unaffected by hole cards at the very least. So Morello, when you normal summon it, you get to automatically search a hole card from your deck to your hand. Most of the time it's going to be Bottomless or Floodgate because those are the most versatile. Number 1. Number 2, if this card is special summoned, you can pop one card, spawn trap card your opponent controls. Neither effect is once per turn. This is one of the better cards in the deck. And like I said, it has an effect on special summon and on normal summon, and it synergizes very well with Sarah. Next, we've got 3 copies of Dionea. This again is one of the better ones, unaffected by hole cards. When it's normal summon, you can target one Traptrix monster and special summon it in defense mode. Very key because you can't special summon Sarah. Summon it in defense mode. That effect is not once per turn, but when this card is special summon, you can set a hole card from your deck to the field, but it does get banished during the next end phase if you don't use it. And that usually would be a problem, but we are playing 3 copies of Traptrix Mantis. This is the second newest card of all of them. This card, when it's normal summon, you add a Traptrix monster from your deck to your hand, and when it is, and then it has a quick effect. You can use it during your opponent's turn or your turn. You can return this card. You can return a set card to your hand, and if you want to, set another card. So, like, let's say you didn't use the card that you set with Dionea, you can just return it to your hand. Also, this card is really good because it is one of the only effects that you can activate with no setup required, because the problem with Dionea is her special summon effect. Like, let's say you activate a trap and you special summon Dionea, you have to have a hole in the graveyard to activate her effect. And with Morello, you need to, your opponent has to have cards on the field for you to even pop that effect off. But this effect you can activate going first, because all you have to do is just return a set card. The set card, you could have literally just set the card. It could have been the card you just searched off of Morello. So it's really good because you can activate it turn 1 during your opponent's turn. It's a very good effect. Also, the bouncing cards back to your hand can help you dodge around Twin Twisters, stuff like that. It really is a very good effect. Next, we've got 2 copies of Traptrix Nepethys. So, as always, unaffected by hole cards. And then if you activate a whole normal card, you can add to hand or special summon a Traptrix monster from your deck, which is a very good effect. I only play 2 because you really only want to have one of these on the field. She's weaker than like all the other ones, as you can see. Like, we've got 1500 on Mantis, we've got 1700 on Dionea, and I think like 1600 on Morello. She's really weak. She just sits in defense mode. Her effect is a hard once per turn, which I think is the only hard once per turn except for Dionea's second effect. All the other ones are either soft once per turns or not once per turn at all. So she has a hard once per turn and really bad stats, so usually you just want to leave one of her on the field in defense mode, just to help you search and summon things out. But I play 2 of that, so in total we've got 11 main deck Traptrix monsters. This just ensures that you always have a Traptrix. You always have a Traptrix in your opening hand, basically, because you really don't want to open up all traps. It's really hard to do that, but it's hard to play through that. But this ensures that you always have at least one Traptrix, because at least 1 out of 4 cards in your deck are a Traptrix monster. So overall, that is my monster lineup in terms of the Traptrix cards. Alright, next we've got 1 Artifact Lancia, 1 Artifact Scythe, and 1 Artifact Moral Talk. So basically, these cards you can set in your spell and trap card zones if you want to. And if they are destroyed in the spell and trap card zones, you can special summon them to the field, and then they get a different effect based on, which one got destroyed. When this card is special summoned to the field, you get to pop a card on the field. When this card is special summoned to the field, your opponent can summon from the extra deck till the end of the turn. And when this card is special summoned to the field, your opponent cannot banish. Artifact also, if you tribute Artifact from your hand during your opponent's turn, they can't banish cards, so it's good against Orcus, good against Thunder Dragons, good against cards like that, or decks like that, rather. So all 3 of them have some decent utility. I play all 3 because I play the Artifact Sanctum engine. So, you just summon out whatever you need based on what your opponent is playing. Sometimes you'll stun them so badly with trap hole cards that you will just need to summon a Moral Talk and pop whatever's left before they end their turn. Sometimes you'll just summon out Scythe because you don't even want them to have any kind of extra deck plays. And sometimes Lancia is the best option because it shuts off a deck like Orcus completely. Like, they can't do anything. They can't even go through their basic plays. So they're all versatile. You gotta look at you gotta pick your poison here. But even setting them is pretty good sometimes. That's why they're not really as big of a brick in this deck as they are in other decks, because your opponent's trying to pop your back row anyway, so you might as well set this stuff. Alright, so next we've got our last 3 monsters, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Best hand trap in the game, kind of hits everything. I don't know a single deck that this card at least doesn't do some sort of damage against. If you don't have it, just replace it with whatever you need to replace. But that is the monsters. Alright, next for the spells, we've got the Wallet Killers, 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This card is it is the best possible draw card that you can play in this deck. I really can't think of anything else. The problem with Pot of Desires is you're playing a lot of one-ofs, and you really want to go through your deck. You're special summoning a lot of Traptrix monsters. With all of their various effects. With Sarah, you're activating stuff with Rafflesia. You wanna set cards back. You want to search cards. You do not want to banish cards in your deck. You don't want to use Pot of Desires. You don't want to use Into the Void. You just don't want to use any of that stuff. I really think this is by far the best draw card for this deck. Like, I almost want to say, if you don't play this, you might as well just... if you don't play this, you might as well not play any other draw cards. Just play the regular engine. Even Card of Demise is a little frustrating because you really do want to special summon Sarah turn 1. You don't want to... it'd be a little too... Yeah, you really don't want to special summon... you really want to special summon Sarah immediately. So this is by far the best draw card that you can play. I don't know if there is a budget alternative. I try to give them every single time, but I really don't know if there is. But 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance, 1 copy of Double or Nothing. We do play the Utopia. We do the Utopia nonsense. Utopia double nonsense. Alright, off to the traps. Probably the most important part of the deck. To start off with the trap hole cards. We've got 1 copy of Bottomless Trap Hole. Everybody knows what this does. Came off the ban list recently. Now it's at 3. When your opponent special summons a monster with 1500 or more attack, you can banish it, destroy it and banish it. We've got Floodgate Trap Hole, one of my favorites. These 2 are the ones that you want to search off Morelio or search right away to your hand because they're so versatile they can be used against any deck. Um, Floodgate, when your opponent summons a monster, you flip it face down, they can flip it back up. You would think that would be bad against link monsters, but it's actually fantastic when they're trying to get to their link monsters. So like if you're playing against pendulums, for example, a pendulum summon, this can hit multiple monsters. So when they pendulum summon, let's say 3, you just activate this, they're all booked, and one of them is usually in the extra monster zone. So that is just a level of frustration that pendulum players, it's difficult to get out of that. Like a monster that you can't flip back face up in the extra monster zone is a really frustrating thing to play through. But definitely a very good one. So these two are the most versatile of all of them. Next we've got Traptrix, Trap Hole Nightmare. This card's like Strike, but worse and searchable. So basically, when a monster your opponent controls that was special summon activates its effect, negate that effect and destroy that card. So it's like Strike. It's a lot like Strike, but it doesn't obviously stop cards in the hand. It doesn't stop cards in the graveyard. It really only stops a special summon monster on the field. But still, it's very, very useful. And again, it's searchable. It's searchable throughout the deck through like a million different ways. It's searchable through Sarah. You can activate it directly from the deck with Rafflesia, which is important. You can search it with Morelio. It's very good because it really doesn't matter, even if you play ones that aren't as good, because you can search them and you can activate them from the deck. You have to remember, Rafflesia is like a metaverse during your opponent. Like it's a metaverse during either player's turn for any Traptrix card. So even if the situation just fits, just use it. So this card is very good against Nightmare, like Nightmare Phoenix. It's very good against Nightmare Mermaid when Orcus is trying to build a board against you. It's very good against those decks, so I definitely would play one. Next, we've got the Treacherous Trap Hole. You got to be really smart with this card. First of all, this is key. Your cards are unaffected by trap cards and hole cards regardless. So even if your opponent special summons one monster, you can still activate this card and target your own monster and target their monster, and your monster won't get destroyed anyway. So it's always live, but you got to keep in mind this card destroys two monsters on the field, non-targeting, but you can't have trap cards in the graveyard. So be smart with it. It's always the first card you want to use. Usually you want to leave it in your deck and you want to activate it with Rafflesia if you have Rafflesia, if you have access to it in turn 1. If you don't, then you should, then that's probably the one you want to search first because it pops 2 cards, 2 monster cards. Next we've got a Network Trap Hole. This is one of I think this is the newest one actually. When your opponent special summons a monster from the main deck or graveyard, which virtually everyone is doing anyway, you banish it face down. They basically have no way of getting it back, which is awesome. I love this. It's one of the best ones. And again, it's searchable. It's versatile. You don't have to search it from your deck, and if you don't want it, just leave it. One Time Space Trap Hole. This one, when your opponent special summons from the hand or extra deck, more so from the extra deck, you shuffle the card back into the deck, and then you lose 1,000 life points, which is somewhat relevant in time. But I mean, let's be honest. Usually, game 1 is going to come to a close anyway. And like I said, if you're going first game 1, you're usually going to win. This one is controversial. Break Off Trap Hole. I have not seen anybody play this, and I really don't know why. Okay, so when a link monster is link summoned, destroy all monsters on the field that are not linked. So not co-linked, but linked. So, like let's say your opponent summons a Borreload, just a Borreload. You get to pop that Borreload. Additionally, this card, like let's say you summon a Traptrix Sarah. You activate this card. All monsters on the field that are not linked are destroyed. All of them. All the monsters in your opponent's side of the field that are not linked are destroyed. Which is kind of crazy because, I mean, you summon this, and not to mention, even though your monster's not linked, your monster's unaffected by traps, so it doesn't matter. So that's really cool. So you can trigger it off your own monster summons. But not only that, this card is actually good against decks that play the Guard Dragon board, because usually what they'll do is they'll like summon a monster here and it'll point down. They'll summon a monster here, then it'll point left, and they'll summon like 2 more monsters off to the side, and none of them will actually be pointing at each other. So you just wait till they summon one of the Guard Dragons, probably like Elpie or Pisty, and you just, as soon as they summon one of those, you just hit them with this and just lose everything. And it's very difficult for them to recover that because they really don't have protection along that play. So that card is very good in that situation. Alright, next we play 3 copies of Artifact Sanctum. This is fuels the artifact engine, lets you summon all of the artifacts as you saw earlier, being these 3 right here. Usually you want to go for Scythe because it stops your opponent from summoning from the extra deck. But also if this card is popped, you get to destroy a card your opponent controls. So usually you'll set it your opponent like Twin Twister, because they know you have like a lot of trap cards face down, like hole cards like Bottomless and stuff like that. And of course you are able to mix all of them with Mantis, so your opponent doesn't actually know what you have face down, which is very cool. But basically they'll end up being dumb and targeting one of your Sanctums, and then you automatically flip Sanctum, resolve its effects, special summon the card, and then pop one of your opponent's cards. So very, very cool. 3 copies of Artifact Sanctum. Next, we've got another mandatory 3 of that is unfortunately unsearchable in this particular deck. 3 copies of Phantom Knight, Shade Brigandine. Alright, so this card is important. It is a free summon during turn 1, but most importantly, it is a free trap activation during turn 1, which helps Sarah activate her effects. So basically it triggers Sarah's effects and gives you a +2 going first, which is very, very, very important. I haven't found a way to search this card, even though this is a very searchable, very abusable card. It is actually very difficult to do in this deck because all Traptrix monsters are actually Earth, so it's hard to like play with the whole Phantom engine. So even though this is a very, very abusable and searchable card, I actually haven't found a way to make it searchable, but it is one of the best cards to draw in your opening hand. Like this and a Traptrix monster is like full combo. I'll show you the combo right after this. But it's very unfortunate that I haven't found a way to make this a little more versatile. But at the very least, you play Pot of Extravagance, so your opening hand is 7 cards, usually, unless they ash it. But I mean, I guess you'd want them to ash the Extravagance because you don't want them to ash all the other stuff. But definitely, if I could figure out a way to make it like a Phantom Knight Traptrix deck, I hope I would. Next, we've got 3 copies of, and this card's fun, Super Team Buddy Force Unite. At first I wasn't going to play this, but it actually does work very well with the deck. Most of the Traptrix cards are all plants. Like the important, like this is a plant. Nephthys is a plant. Mantis is an insect, because it's a mantis. Dionea is another plant, which is one of the best special summon effect is actually on Dionea. And Morelio is an insect, and then the 2 XYZ, the Link monster and the XYZ monster are both plants. So you'll always have a plant on the field, or you'll always have a plant. You'll usually have an insect, and it actually works very well because if your opponent, so all you have to do with this card is you target a monster and then special summon a monster with that same type but a different name from your hand or graveyard. So very good. Has a lot of synergy, helps you summon the plants, helps you get the bricks out of your hand, helps you trigger the effects of all of the Traptrix monsters. It really does have a lot of great synergy with the deck. On top of that, if this card is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can actually set another copy of this card from your deck. So this card was originally, I was actually playing 3 evenly matched, but I decided to replace it with this because I was worried about going second, but then I just realized, like, you know what, you might as well go first and win so badly that you don't have to worry about going, like, you don't, like, it's better to have a deck that's built entirely going to go first than like 95% to go first and then like 3% to go second, because it doesn't even make sense. I'm sorry, 5% to go second, because it doesn't even make sense to play the evenly matched in this deck, because if you draw it going first, it's entirely useless, and then you end up setting up a field that's like, it makes it impossible to ever activate the evenly matched ever again. So I would say, yeah, just the whole deck is built to go first, and the side deck is built to go second, obviously. So this has a lot of synergy with the deck. Next, we've got 3 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. Number 1, this card is very good against decks that have a similar game plan, like Altergeist and stuff like that. But on a secondary note, this card is very good for popping the artifacts, It's good for popping the artifacts. Like let's say you hard draw, like not Scythe, but one of the other artifacts. Where am I keeping them? Let's say you hard draw like one of these three, obviously, or Artifact Sanctum. You can activate this, target your own card, and like pop the Scythe, for example, and you can still use the Scythe, even though you sort of bricked and used it. You sort of bricked and drew it. You can still pop your own Scythe and then still be able to lock your opponent out of special summoning from the extra deck that turn, or any of the other artifact effects. So it's good for that, but it's also good, like I said, for popping back row. And we've got one last card, Imperial Order. It's a one of. You only play 4 spells in the entire deck, and usually activating Imperial Order against the right deck is like an auto win anyway. This is a one of. You know, I would play 3 if I could. I don't like playing Anti-Spell Fragrance because this deck only really has like a few forms of spell and trap card removal. So I'd rather them not set them. I'd rather them just go through with it and then I respond. So I'd rather, like, you know, they activate multi-roll and then I activate to special summon Morelio and then pop their multi-roll, because multi-roll doesn't have the effect until the end phase anyway. Like stuff like that. I'd rather pop their face-up cards than anything. Like pop their Trickstar Light Stage, stuff like that. But definitely very good card against the right decks, and if it's not good, then you just side it out. It's at 1. It's not that serious, and it doesn't really hurt you. It hurts you very minimally. All right, off to we'll go to the extra deck next. We play 3 copies of Traptrix Era. Basically changed the entire deck, makes it very consistent. All right, so this card's effect. Whenever this first of all unaffected by traps. Got to preface that it has to be link summoned to be unaffected by traps. So if you special summon it from the graveyard with Super Team Buddy Force, it still has its other effects, but it can't. It's affected by traps. That's number 1. Number 2, when a normal trap is activated, so even when your opponent activates that normal trap, you can special summon a Traptrix monster from your deck. That's number 1. Number 2. Oh yeah, so that's good because sometimes your opponent will impermanence this, just like a free +1. And then secondary effect, when a Traptrix monster activates its effect, you can set a trap hole card directly from your deck. Basically, you will a lot of them activate on special summon, with the exception of Nephthys and the Mantis, but Mantis has a quick effect, so you can activate it anytime you want. So basically, the first effect fuels the second effect, which is really, really cool. It's, like I said, this card is like a +2 every single time. It's such a well-designed card, and it's a Link 1. They really thought this one through, because this deck really couldn't afford to summon, like, it couldn't afford to be a Link 2 or Link 3. It had to be a Link 1, because this deck is really slow. It can't afford to summon out, like, it couldn't be a Link 3 because it'd just be way too frustrating and annoying. Alright, next we've got the 3 copies of Borreload Dragon. I prefer Borreload over Borrelsword for this particular deck, because sometimes your opponent will just summon a monster that is like untargetable, huge attack, can't be destroyed by battle. It's easier just to take their monster than it is to deal with, like, it's just too difficult. Yeah, it's better to just steal the monster than it is to try to attack over with Borrelsword. So definitely I'd prefer Borreload, but you can do whatever you want. It's your life. Next we played 3 copies of Traptrix Rafflesia. I could not find a third copy. I'm not even like over exaggerating when I say this. I really do own like over 1 million Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I do not have a third copy of this that I have found in the last 4 days. I don't know where it is. I know I have one, I just don't know where it is. But I had to proxy one temporarily. We've got Rafflesia. Rafflesia, amazing card. Unaffected by traps while it has an XYZ material. Also, it makes basically all Traptrix monsters like a Chaos Max Dragon, because they are unaffected. Not unaffected. They cannot be destroyed by battle. They cannot be destroyed by card effects, and they can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects. So all cards except for her. She's the only one that can be. She's also a plant, so she synergizes well with the Super Team Buddy Force and everything. Next, and her other effect is that she can activate a trap hole card directly from the deck and make it her effect if it applies. So let's say your opponent summons Pinkertops. You can you summon Pinkertops. You can just respond with whatever you need to, or whatever you think is reasonable. Force out his effect. Force out his tribute to pop. But it's good. You can activate effects directly from deck. It does count as her effect, so it's not a trap card activating. But that again fuels the Sarah because it activates a card, and then you can set a card directly from deck. Then we've got 3 copies of Utopia Double. This card is pretty simple. It's 2 level 4s. When you summon it, you activate effect, detach your material, search this. Then you can summon a Utopia over it, which we play 3 copies of Utopia 39. You summon Utopia 39 over this card, and it gets double the attack, so now he has 5,000. You declare an attack on a monster, negate it with its own effect. Then you activate quick effect, quick play card, double or nothing. Basically, when an attack is negated, you can double the attack of that monster, and they can attack again, so his attack becomes 10,000. Amazing card. So if your opponent leaves like a Ray or a Galatea or any monster that's like below 2,000 attack, just in attack mode, you just automatically win. Just anything. As long as it has less than 2,000 attack, you just get a free win. So definitely very good for the little like aggressive engine. Of course, we play 2 more copies. So basically, we play 5 different monsters in the extra deck. We play 5 different monsters in the extra deck, and at 3 because consistency here. Then we got the side deck real quick. 3. It's basically built to go second because this deck can't go second with the core deck. We've got 3 Dino Wrestler Pancatrops. We've got our other 2 Lancias to destroy Thunder Dragons. We got Psyframe Gamma, Psyframe Driver. 3 copies of Evenly Matched, very good against back row decks like this deck. And 3 copies of Red Reboot, again, just to kind of turn off your opponent's trap cards for a turn. Very good against similar decks to this. And now, let's go into the combo portion of the video. Alright guys, this is the combo section of the Traptrix video here. We have a 2-card combo. It is Phantom Knight Shade Brigandine and any Traptrix monster. Any of these. Usually, the best ones are these 2, because they're a +1 on summon. They bait out Ash. They bait out. They bait out the hand traps. The what's this called? The impermanence, stuff like that. So usually you want these 2, but the combo also works with these 2. But Mantis and Maramello are usually the best 2. So this is how the combo goes. This one is the absolute best, but let's do it right now. I'm going to normal summon the Morello, and we are going to search out any, obviously, trap card we want, any of these. I usually will search out the regular bottomless to the hand. So our hand is now these 2. Then I will link out the Morello right there and special summon the Sarah. I will now set the Brigandine and activate the Brigandine to special summon it right there. Now I will be able to special summon any of the Traptrix monsters that I want. Always summon the Mantis if you're going first, because you can activate its effect immediately. So you activate the effect of Mantis. Oh, not yet. Hold on. You summon Mantis. Now you will set the bottomless, activate the effect of Mantis, bounce the bottomless back to your hand. The effect of Sarah goes off to set a trap card directly from our deck. So we will usually set the Floodgate Trap Hole. I think this one's one of the better ones. So those 2 are usually the safest. So now our board, we already went, as you can see, +3. We started with 2, we're +3. We have a bottomless, a Floodgate Trap Hole, a Mantis, a Sarah, and a Shade Brigandine. We are now going to overlay these 2 into Rafflesia. So our board right now, Unaffected by traps. Unaffected by traps as long as it has the material. We have a bottomless, and we have a floodgate trap hole. This card flips them face down. They can't change their battle position. Very good against a lot of decks that eventually need to link summon. They might summon in the wrong section. Bottomless, you know what bottomless does. Finally got taken off the ban list. And Rafflesia makes it so all of our cards are basically, all of our Traptrix monsters except for Rafflesia are basically like a bunch of Chaos Max Dragons. They can't be targeted, they can't be destroyed by battle. Very, very good. So now, you would think this is done. As soon as your opponent's turn gets started, if they summon any monster, usually the best thing to do first is to activate Rafflesia directly from activate Rafflesia's monster effect to select a trap card, trap hole card from the grave from our deck, activate it right as activate it as if it is it becomes treated as Rafflesia's effect. So immediately when they summon anything, you activate Treacherous Trap Hole. This lets you pop two monster cards on the field. Target the Sarah, target their monster because this card you can't have any traps in the graveyard to resolve this card. So you want to get it out of your deck as quick as possible, but at the same time take something with it. So you pop that card, and sometimes actually they'll summon like if you're playing against Orcus, for example, they'll summon the Neospace Connector and then summon the Dolphin, so you just get to pop both of them. But sometimes you'll have to target your own monster to target their monster. But remember, all of your monsters are unaffected by traps, so it doesn't matter, or hole cards, which this is. So you pop their monster, trigger the effect of Sarah immediately to search, get one of these. I like Break Off Trap Hole because it when a Link monster is summoned, you can destroy all other cards on the field. Remember, you are always all other cards that aren't link summoned, but remember, not only are you link summoned, your cards are unaffected by it anyway, so this card is like a light, it's basically like a light, what is it called? It's kind of like a Torrential Tribute, but it doesn't affect your cards. So I'm going to set the Break Off Trap Hole right there. I just might as well keep it face up. And then as soon as your opponent summons anything else, activate Floodgate, activate Sarah, special summon. Usually I like to do the Nepethys right about now. And then every time we activate a trap hole card from now on, basically get to search for free. So I think that's pretty good. That is with very minimal things that your opponent can do. And remember to always keep this in the deck and activate it with Rafflesia just in case, because sometimes they'll Twin Twister your back row, and then you basically can't activate this anymore. So just leave that in your deck. Always activate it with Rafflesia, and then these are pretty good here. But as you can see, the deck really has a lot of versatility and can deal with a lot of crazy matchups. But yeah, that's the basic 2-card combo. Very good. Also, you know, there's a slower combo, which is basically the regular any Traptrix monster, go into Sarah, set 2 back row or 3 back row, and that'll usually be pretty decent too. But that is the sort of turbo combo that I came up with so far. Thank you.